Bartholomew Town.
Are you looking to advance in your career or explore a new field? The University of Rhode Island now offers a comprehensive portfolio of fully online programs designed to bring world-class education to you anytime, anywhere. Choose from a wide range of flexible, asynchronous programs in business and leadership, data, tech, and STEM, healthcare and pharmacy, marine and environmental science, and more. With expert faculty and innovative courses, you'll gain the skills and knowledge to thrive in today's competitive world. Are you ready to take the next step? Visit uri.edu/online and discover how URI Online can help you achieve your goals. URI Online, learn anywhere with us. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Harrison Tuttle, here he is in studio. I guess anybody who doesn't know who you are, which to me would be a shocking revelation because you're a total superstar, but if you just kind of want to give the executive summary for anybody who doesn't know who you are.
Yeah, no, my story is just like any other person. Grew up here in Rhode Island, grew up in Cranston, Rhode Island, went to Western Hills in middle school, went to Bishop Hendricken in high school, grew up with a single mom, two brothers who experienced housing insecurity, and grew up in a world in which people that looked like me were killed by police that I saw growing up on TV and over a cell phone. And so at that point in 2020, it was really a boiling point for me as to if I was not going to use my voice, then, who was going to speak up for myself and the other people that I cared about. And so here I am. Didn't know anybody in politics, started organizing with elected officials such as Senator Chiara Mack and House Representative David Morales to get them into office, and then kind of followed the trajectory of running for office myself in 2022. And then advocating for the famous LEOBOR, or the Law Enforcement the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, which we continue to seek to be repealed.
Yeah, and you're the executive director of the Black Lives Matter Rhode Island Political Action Committee, different than BLM-RI. I mean, that's kind of another tributary. We don't necessarily need to go down, but just for clarity, unless you want to go down there, the differentiation.
No, it's always something that folks get confused on. I've had folks in the community who understandably are very close-guarded in terms of who they organize around, who have been confused many times. I will have some news in a couple of months as to what may be changing around our name.
So here we are. We're recording this on the Tuesday after Trump 2.0 inauguration, the inauguration of Trump 2.0. And there's so much to get to on the local level, and let's get to that pretty quickly here. But just, we saw yesterday, a completely shocking, maybe not shocking actually, but a completely deranged performance by Donald Trump in what was really a campaign-style speech in his inaugural address, then sort of an ad hoc, ad-lib presentation to supporters, and throughout the whole night, the executive orders that he signed. On top of that, we saw essentially the shadow president, Elon Musk, deliver a Nazi salute on stage. This is real. You know what? If you voted based on specific issues, you should have known what was coming. No matter how bad and deranged the system has been in so many levels, now we've gone to the point where we're talking about fascists and Nazis actually controlling the government. Your reaction?
Yeah, I just want to localize it here in terms of what it means for people who are listening, who are in Rhode Island or in the immediate New England area. We are not safe. As I'm talking on this podcast, I'm actively thinking about what I say. as to potentially the harm that I put myself in now that we live in this new world in which all of our apps and technology is taken over by the individuals who are sitting in the front row at the inauguration, who paid over $1 million to be able to have access to the current president. What it means is that we have individuals in Providence, Pawtucket, Central Falls, all throughout the state who are now at risk of federal agents, ICE, coming in and ripping your family and friends and your neighbors away from your community, away from your schools, away from the people that you love. This is no longer a case of, in theory, this would happen. We record this podcast on Tuesday, and it's reported that ICE raids are to begin today in Chicago and in Boston and in New York. These are places in which are Democrat-led cities. We need to take considerable action as to how we protect our communities, both at a state level and at municipal levels, particularly when it comes to protecting our most vulnerable here in the state.
Definitely agree with you on the localization level, and then in a lot of different ways. Number one, protecting ourselves on an individual basis, whatever that means, whether it means trying to be refocused, being healthy, emotionally healthy, being clear, being especially for somebody who's put themselves out there, being alert. These are not exaggerations, and some people want to laugh it off and sort of spike the football and say, oh, you guys are out of your mind. It's actually not the case. I don't think that Donald Trump himself is going to kick the door in here at the podcast studio and harass us, but I think that there's definitely plenty of people in Rhode Island who are disciples, MAGA disciples, extremists, that if they saw you or I, not the university you or I out on the street somewhere, there's definitely people who know who we are and hate us, and I'm not sure what they would do. So there's a preparation mindset there. More macro is the danger that our brothers, sisters, and otherwise who are, whether they're from an immigrant family, documented, undocumented, it doesn't seem to matter right now. This is a dystopian nightmare. And what we need to do in Rhode Island is take 100% of our energy and put it into protecting the progress we've made and finding a way to keep moving forward in spite of the fact that this is a nightmare. I mean, the manufacturing of consent has already started. I saw a New York Times article that was like, well, you know, many Americans are actually starting to warm up to Trump. He's really not that bad. Isn't he kind of funny with the dance, the YMCA, and this, that, and the other? Even the elites are trying to rally around this and say, yeah, you know, it's not that bad. It is that bad.
And I think that's the problem, Bill, is the elites, right? The elites are trying to tell you, the listener, what to think. Meanwhile, you are struggling to pay your bills. You're struggling to have to make the choice between your health care, your food, your rent, or your mortgage. And the realities in which we see on TV aren't matching up to the realities that we live every single day. And how people react to that right now, they either are taking positions in which they advocate and they are organizing to make sure that us as a community are taken care of, including our most vulnerable, or individuals will go into the rhetoric. And I'm not necessarily upset at the fact that there are individuals in Rhode Island that are buying into this, more of the fact that we don't have the infrastructure in the Democratic Party in this state in which can counteract some of this thing. We talk about us being in one state and it being a blue state. Meanwhile, we have individuals in Congress that are elected here in Rhode Island that are going to an inauguration and are already beginning to do this type of rhetoric in which to say, well, we're going to the inauguration because it's a peaceful transfer of power. Meanwhile, you know, for the last 2 years, you've spent time saying that this individual is a fascist and should not be in office. And so which one is it? Are we cozying up to the elites, or are we getting back to the individuals in West Warwick and in Woonsocket and all across the state who are struggling to pay their bills?
Yes. And we've known for really since, I don't know, all of both of our lives, I mean, we're relatively similarly aged, that the Democratic Party is part of the business party, the business coalition. I mean, it's not like it's this workers' leftist or sort of people's populist party. And we saw it come to a head for sure with Bernie Sanders. We saw the concerted effort to concentrate power around Biden in 2020 and resist the notion that anybody is going to come in and disrupt business. We have business people running this country, both in terms now, especially of elected office, but also in terms of those who are driving policy. It's business. We are part of a business. And when you look at Rhode Island right now and you see, okay, we're a blue state, what does that even really mean? We hear that and that's supposed to comfort us. Does it?
No, I mean, we're in a budget deficit. So we look at our own state, how people are affected. If we were a business, if we were running our own checkbook, we would be homeless.
Yes.
Because we are in a budget deficit. The problem is that as a result, there are actual human beings that are increasingly going on the street. There are 68% of single adult Rhode Islanders who cannot afford to pay for their basic necessities. They make under $49,000 a year. That's 68% of single adult Rhode Islanders. And buying a home, forget about it, right? Which we know is the biggest access to equity over time. So we're in a situation in which we're having, a governor currently right now who is restricting free speech from those same individuals, from listeners like you who want to have their voice heard, who are just, we're not asking for mansions. We're asking for health care. We're asking for food accessibility. We're asking for our rents to be lowered. These are the necessities in which we need in order to survive so that we can take care of our children, take care of the people that we care about in a world, in a country, federally, in which just provides no hope for a future that we all want.
Completely agree. Now, you referenced the governor. A week ago was the state of the state, and you had organized the People's State of the State, which was a protest of sorts that was to take place in the State House Rotunda prior to the deliverance of the state of the state by the governor. And this was promoted. It was put out there. You came on the radio with Dan York. It was out there. I mean, people knew about this. And the essence of it was, I think, more than anything, looking at the crisis of the unhoused right now and saying, how is it possible that in a world where, or in a society that is as wealthy as ours, in a government that is robust as ours is, and a nonprofit super sector that is robust as it is, how could we possibly be in a situation where people are on the street? So that was kind of the main point. But it was broadly, hey, people can't afford to be in Rhode Island right now. They can't afford rent. They can't afford food. This isn't like on the fringes. This is a lot of people. So you organize this event. It's to take place in the Rotunda, and the governor's office checkmated you by rent or I don't know the right word, but booking the Rotunda for themselves. They put up stanchions and some kind of rope and a sign with the Capitol Police insignia on it that says Rotunda booked. So you didn't book it. They booked it. They checkmated you, so to speak. Then they force you into the bell room, which is a tiny little area that is on the opposite side of the entranceway to the main entrance to the State House. On top of this, for some reason, they said it was some kind of confusion, they don't allow broadcast cameras into the State of the State delivery itself. They have state-controlled Capitol TV filming it. Meanwhile, the Senate president falls asleep up there. No, that's not on television because you think Capitol TV is going to catch that. So you see, I don't know what in the world they were thinking. Why on earth they wouldn't have said, hey, let him do the protest in the Rotunda. I'm going to walk. How about the governor walks out there? I'm sure you get booed by people, but say, hey, what do you guys need? What's the disconnect here? Let's close this right now. Let's work together. Tomorrow morning, I want you guys in my office to figure this out. What was your interaction with the governor's office, the police, and overall, why was this protest not treated seriously by officialdom?
Well, I mean, you ask any Rhode Islander out on the street who has spent any time in the state, and asked them how they would expect something like this to go. And this is exactly what they would say. They would say that the Rhode Island state government, that being the governor or any involvement in the state, will push them to the side and they won't have their voice heard. And that's exactly what happened, but at a massive level here with the People's State of the State. You know, this is an interesting conversation, both around free speech, but also our intention, which is to provide a reality. You know, we talk about individuals who are living paycheck to paycheck, what we all collectively want, what the listeners want. And, we have individuals that came to the State House on a Tuesday night in the cold to talk about traumatic experiences, that being financial, emotional, things in which, I think most people would have difficulty telling their family members. And these individuals were willing, some unhoused, some older, to come up and challenge the state to say that the state of the state that the governor was going to give does not match the reality of what's going on in the ground. And the people know that. And so when the governor decided to block off the rotunda, he wasn't just blocking off, me, who, has gotten media interviews and podcasts, whatever, attention, but he blocked off you. He blocked off any opportunity for an individual such as yourself who's listening, who might have gone through issues currently or in the past, to use their voice. And they put you in the bell room and told you that if you stepped just 1 foot in the people's house a certain way, up the rotunda to the second floor, into the third floor, that they were going to arrest you. And this is the reality that we live in the state with our governor. It's incredibly disappointed. I remember, and I have a lot of disagreements with this individual, but I remember during the 2020 protests, at the time, Governor Gina Raimondo came down and met with the protesters. Right, and she was criticized because she didn't have a mask on. That's what the big takeaway was from a lot of people. But the reality was that she did exactly that. She said, you know what, we're going to go out there, and even if it's just a photo op, at least we're going to go out there and let's do some listening for a second. And you talk to people, I've talked to people in the community, and people really appreciated that. Yeah. I may have my own political reasons, we may make a political analysis on it, but people really appreciated that Gina Raimondo did that. And I think, when we look at the current governor that we have, we see a governor that is leading and not being transparent. It's very Trumpian in terms of the things that you hear from that office, particularly when it comes to how he stresses loyalty. And loyalty over everything. He says he's got this big table that has 10 people in it, but those 10 people weren't the 10 people that were in the People's State of the State. And so I question, who are those 10 people? Who are those 10 Rhode Islanders, if not the 68% of Rhode Islanders who are struggling to make ends meet right now? Right. Here's the thing about McKee, and feel free to disagree, and I've been saying this for years. I remember getting into arguments during the Regenberg-McKee lieutenant governor run in 2018 with people and saying, hey, you know what? If Raimondo leaves for a position in a future Democratic White House in 2020, this is pre-pandemic, who do you think should be governor? Aaron Regenberg, a 20-something-year-old kid who, to the best of my knowledge, has limited work experience, limited governmental experience, sure, a cup of coffee as a state rep here and there, but for the most part, pretty inexperienced, or a Dan McKee, a guy who has been a leader at all levels of government, well, not all levels, but within the municipal level and the state level, has a robust network of connections in business, in the private sector, in the public sector. Who do you think's better? Look at that single question. So I've been advocating for Dan McKee for years, and I still think that would have been the right choice. I'm not sure that even Aaron Regenberg, deep down in his heart, would admit that he would have been suited to be governor at that point in time. But now I'm looking at this situation. I'm going, wait a minute. Dan McKee needs
One, I think he's a good person. In fact, I know it. I think he's a soulful person. I think he's a smart person. I think he's a person who knows how to build coalitions. So all that being said, what is going on right now? This seems so out of character for him. Now, people have disagreed with that notion. Steve Alquist was on here. He was like, nope, you're wrong. McKee's not a good person, and this is his characteristic. But I just don't understand who's in the room with Dan McKee right now or on the phone or whatever that's saying, you know what, screw the protesters, screw the media, screw the broad coalition building. They're your enemy. Do your thing and talk about attendance and give a shout out to a JV soccer team that is, competing in a league nobody's ever heard about, that's a part of a stadium project that we've got to foot the bill for, that hopefully is going to work out, and tell people everything's okay in Rhode Island. It's insane.
It's interesting. In politics, we often try to elevate certain people based on the responsibility that they have. And I think one of the things that you just did was humanize the governor, which I think is incredibly important. And as I say this, as I, take multiple shots at him beforehand, but the question that you posed, Bill, it's a good question. Here's a guy from Cumberland, municipal government, has people on his staff that he's given second chances to, battling different issues that have to do with the very things that are dealing with folks who are unhoused, addiction, whatever. Coach, for a basketball team. And so all the ingredients in which you would think would be able to understand the intersectionalities of poverty and the importance of teamwork. That is just not the reality. And it's really started with the bridge. I mean, it goes all the way back to the bridge as to the lack of transparency that has been throughout this process, whether that has been his fault or previous administrations. I mean, certainly the substructure is going to cost upwards of over $300 million. We know that. We know that we have 2 hospitals that are going to be, closing soon. The only thing that's keeping those things up, funny enough, is the Attorney General and Roger Williams and Fatima. And so we are entering 2025 with a state that is broke, unable, unwilling to meet people's demands, their voices, unwilling to raise taxes on our most wealthy, those in which have gotten tax cuts my entire life since 1997. Oftentimes folks will focus on 2006 with the tax cuts that's cost the state, $4 billion. But going back to 1997, so we have just had an incredible lack of investment in terms of who we're taking care of, who are our priorities, and it's coming, 2025 as a top issue as we see the economy nationally continue to decline. And my hope is that Rhode Island changes course for the first time in a long time as to how we run the state, who runs the state. We'll have elections coming up, and it won't just be the governor's election. It will be the local races, who your local city councilor is, who your state rep is, because those are the individuals that have the power in order to push the political elite in this state to make action. I think some people are confused over that. It's actually your state rep who puts in a word to the Speaker of the House, or your senator who puts in a word to the Senate President to get the ball rolling on some of these important issues.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes I hear from people that say, "Oh, I'm going to run for governor in 2026, or I'm going to run for Congress in or I'm going to primary Reed or something like that." And I think that's noble. And I think that there's a value to, for example, Dr. Luis Daniel Munoz, whether you love him or hate him, I think there's a huge value to what he brought to the table every time he ran for governor, pushing the envelope, opening up dialogue in spaces that weren't previously opened, bringing expertise, but also I think stretching out certain conversations about, for example, Helena Folks and her connection to the opioid epidemic. That actually was Munoz that brought that into the main conversation. Now that's kind of her Achilles heel. But sometimes I hear from people and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to run for governor Challenge magazine or something like that. I'm like, well, that's great, but wouldn't you be better off running for state rep or state senate or city council where you can actually make changes? Just take a look at Royce and Miguel Sanchez and what they accomplished with. And I know there's some people out there that listen to this show that are probably rolling their eyes. Ha ha ha. No, it's no joke. That was amazing what they did at City Hall. And guess what? They made a huge impact, because even though Brett Smiley, again, another individual who a lot of people want to say is this evil guy or something like that, he's got a big heart. He's a good human. We may disagree on policy. That's fine. But also, he's not an idiot politically. And he saw what happened at that City Hall. And his reaction was, we got to partner in some way with these guys and get the Da Vinci Center going and put our people on the ground and make this happen. And that's exactly what they did. Outsiders, especially elected officials who have standing at the municipal and the state representative and state senate level, have so much power to move the needle. Now, many of them, they don't want to lose their parking spot, and it's kind of an insider thing, and it's, here I am, I got the fancy plate. I've been up there for 30 years or whatever it is. But those who are bold, they literally are ambassadors. Yeah,
it's getting involved in politics is overwhelming for the average person.
Yeah.
And certainly there's a lot of traps that individuals around politics, both at a municipal level and state level, will try to place upon an individual for their own benefit. But to the listener at home, when you're, talking with your spouse or you're talking with your family member and you're ranting about how you can't afford food, how you can't afford to pay for your basic necessities, that's the reason why I'm doing it. That's the reason why it's so important that we need leaders that are vocal, individuals like yourself listening, to step up to the plate. Because the reality is that, although you may know your state rep, that state rep percentage wise is not doing the things that a councilman like Miguel Sanchez or Justin Royce is doing. They are leaders. They are taking the material realities, the realities that everyday people are going through, and they are saying, how can we provide a solution? And that's what people want. They want a solution. They don't want rhetoric. They don't want, to get back and forth of, who's progressive and who's not. People just want to be able to live their life absence of politics. But they want solutions, and solutions should come from the people in an organic way. We have a ton of smart people in this state, and there's no reason why we can't be in a state in which is on the cutting edge of technology, environmental justice, and being able to provide a quality standard of living for individuals.
Totally agree. Another thing I admire about you greatly is that you have come on a number of times with Dan York. And of course, I'm the producer of that show and the host when Dan's not there, which is, 3 or 4 dozen times a year. I don't actually know how many, whatever. So I'm there every day. So Dan York is an ally of Dan McKee, and he's open about that. He's friends with him, and Dan York's also a super smart, compassionate guy. He's got an interesting political worldview that is at once aligned entirely with folks like you and I, but is also more part of officialdom and an established class, so to speak. It's a really fascinating study where he lives. In any case, though, the most important point is that he's an ally of McKee, like a diehard ally, and he's admitted that. This isn't speaking out of school. So the fact that you're willing to come on, and the other day did an hour live on the radio with Dan York, I don't want to say debating, but kind of debating the merits of the people's state of the state. That shows a level of courage and commitment that far too few people are willing to show in engaging politics right now. It's a lot easier to just say, let me go on Blue Sky, listen to that which is confirmation bias and stay in my bubble, so to speak. We all have to be more comfortable going out and saying to the Trump voter, hey, I don't think you're inherently a racist because you voted for Trump, But can I tell you why I think these policies are, or know these policies are racist that Trump's bringing to the table? And both sides have to be willing to have that dialogue. You do that. What's your message to people that are kind of trapped in their own bubble right now? In some ways, it's for emotional and psychological comfort.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say, and I think this falls, I don't know how many conservative listeners you have, Dan. I mean, Bill.
A decent amount.
Yeah.
I hear from them, yeah.
You know, what I'd say is that look at the life that you're living and ask yourself, throw out the rhetoric. Is the elected officials, is the state of Rhode Island, or the state that you live in, contributing to your standard of living improving? And if not, why? Is it because, people in South Providence are, getting more assistance so that they may be able to, eat that night with food benefits and food programs? Or is it because the state refuses to have their own wealthy class pay their fair share in taxes? And really examine that. And I think it's really important for people to make a decision for themselves as to the decisions that elected officials that represent them make every day, and how that contributes to their own standard of living in terms of the individual that they're representing.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've always told Dan York is that I remember 6, 7 years old, driving around in my grandmother's car listening to Dan York, and how it was such a cool moment for me to go on him for the first time for an interview. And I think about all the people that have listened to Dan York over the years, and the wide range of people that do. And it would be foolish of me not to take that moment to be able to talk to Rhode Islanders about giving them an opportunity to speak at the State House. No matter, the political allyship, we live in Rhode Island, everybody's friends with everybody.
Right.
But what really cuts through all of this is the economics. And how close are you to being on the street? Really ask yourself that listening. How close are you? 2 paychecks? Are you 3 paychecks? And is that the world that you want to live in? Is that the world that you envision for your kids, who have less wealth than you did, than your parents? Those are the questions that the governor should have been addressing in the state of the state, and those are the speakers that were highlighting those inequities during the People's State of the State.
Yeah, there's a through line that needs to be understood by all of us, myself included, that we've got to find the commonality of populism that isn't obviously this right wing. I don't even know if you can really call it populism. It's sort of pseudo populism, what Trump and Bolsonaro in Brazil or whatever. I mean, you pick your leader, but this wave, it seems like just fascism in disguise, and I think it is. But there's a way that Republicans reached voters in the 2024 election that was based on the notion of, hey, you're hurting, we hear you, we can help you. Bernie Sanders and other leftist populists did the same thing with their messaging. We've got to find a way as a society to realize, and this is kind of what Occupy Wall Street was all about, that, okay, you have your political worldview, I have mine. You have your spiritual view, I have mine. You have this, you have that. But we have much bigger issues in common with each other in that populist space. And that's where you would think a McKee, any of our elected officials in Rhode Island would say, you know what, let's try to resonate there. It may not be the politically smartest thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. Let's try to find a way to bring everybody together. But, of course, as we started this conversation, government is a function of the business class. And the business class, the last thing they want to hear is that, oh, wow, these two groups of people that have been fighting over transgender bathroom access for the last 2 years, now all of a sudden they're willing to put that aside and come together on economic grounds. That's the divide in this country right now and in this state.
Yeah, it's one of most important things that I learned as an organizer is framing the choice for an individual. And what I mean by that is to say that if it meant getting the things that you wanted, that you would have to work with someone that you didn't like, would you do it? So, for instance, if you are listening and you don't believe that, there should be, transgender, surgery, would you work with, another human being that is different from you in order for you to have a better standard of living? Because you recognize that, all of these cultural wars are meant to distract us from the rich that are literally stealing right now from you. And so while you go to work, while you're struggling to pay the bills, they're putting in $1 million a penny so that they can buy influence with the president of the United States. Yep. And that is the reality. And so we've really got to, and even at a local level, got to recognize that the individuals that own property in this state, those in which, want to dismantle our public transit system, those who want to ensure that folks that are living on the edges right now continue to be pushed out on the edges where they have nowhere to go. And we look at the inactions taken by the state when it comes to our education system, which is so important, which is just the core of any society. And you look at the fact that a city like Central Falls went more conservative, went more red, and then you look at their education system, and then the Democratic Party and then all the elected officials will look and say, man, why are they supporting Trump? It's because the people on the ground right now are not meeting the necessities in which people are electing them and paying them to do.
That's right. Nailed it. And it's unfortunate, obviously, but it's unfortunate that we're in a moment right now that we haven't found the coalition that you just described. It literally doesn't exist to my knowledge. I mean, sure, there are partnerships that happen and we make a big deal out of it. Oh, isn't this so wonderful? Republican Senator X and Democratic Senator Y work together to talk about this issue. Like, well, who cares? Just get it done. But in terms of even at an activist level, there's no real organizational populist movement happening anywhere. Everything, I mean, you got these maniacs going around the state trying to talk about kids with cat ears on using litter boxes. We got all these nuts, and I'll call them that. I used to be more polite of it. These are fools, fascists, and pigs that run around the state trying to hurt people. And most people are good people that should be able to stand up to that kind of garbage. Instead, it becomes the centerpiece of discussions on talk radio and, in the blogosphere or whatever. We got people freezing on the streets. There's snow on the ground. It's 19 degrees outside. You got a complete disaster in the unhoused space. Everybody's pointing fingers at each other. Most of the people pointing the fingers are making huge salaries, taking vacations, literally. And you just go, what world are we in? Why can't we just take a breath and say, hey, let's focus on that which is most obviously destroying our society, which is inequality. Why is that not issue number one? Why people run around this? What's this? I don't even want to use the guy's name. One of these guys in the anti-trans movement, he prides himself on going to school committees and speaking out, and this is his whole thing. It's like, oh my God, imagine if you put a quarter of that energy into saying, hey, what's our tax policy again? And why are we not actually figuring out a way to connect opportunity in disadvantaged neighborhoods and connect opportunity with people who are differently abled? Pick your issue, pick your designation. We're just so screwed up. It's pathetic.
And if you're looking at this from the perspective of, you're a Democrat, you see a future in which we're talking about to be included in the Democratic Party, you got to take a look at the state over the last couple of years. I mean, we are very comfortable in our sense of, we're a blue city no matter what. We're a blue state no matter what. But when we look at the presidential elections, when we look at our congressional races, I think people forget how close that race with Alan Fung was.
Yep.
I think people forget the seeds that are being planted right now when you have I'll say people's names. You may not want to, but when you look at the momentum that someone like Paul Reyna got, when you look at
Paul Rihanna, exactly, right, the people's governor.
And it's interesting because that rhetoric, the people's governor, the same things that we're talking about right now. And I've had conversations with him. Oh yeah, not saying that they weren't productive, but if you ask an individual like that, he would say, I support the things that we're talking about.
Yep.
And that's the through line.
I'm so glad you said that, because you're completely right. And I actually kind of made feel bad for laughing there. I think it was an absurd campaign overall, obviously, but the human being behind it, a CNA in COVID, a guy who definitely understands the economic, and shame on me for even introducing a notion of humor into that, because I'm actually part of the problem by doing that, because there's a guy that there's a commonality in the big picture. He may disagree on religion, on this, on that culture issue, but the big picture issues, you're spot on.
Yep. And again, I think it's, is he, I may get in trouble, but like, this is the first name. Is he Helena, folks? Is he
right.
a CVS executive?
Right.
Or is he a healthcare worker? Right.
Opposite ends of the spectrum.
Opposite ends of the spectrum. In order for us to change in this state, we need to meet people where they're at. And that doesn't mean conforming to the issues in which does not take care of one another. That means meeting people where they're at, taking the time to talk to people at your work, taking the time, especially at your workplace, taking the time to talk to people like your family and friends about, hey, what do we want and what are we willing to kind of collectively fight and struggle for? Yeah. Those are the important conversations. It's not going to be won through elections. It's going to be won through people coming together and demanding for a quality of life in which they've never lived. People go through life every day in pain because they cannot go to the doctors. Is that the life that you want to continue to live? I can't answer that question for that individual who's listening right now. That's the question that you have to answer, and you have to seek out solutions, or you're just going to continue to live this way.
You're an inspiring person. You always have been to me. You're one of my heroes, man, and I love the work you're doing. I love the person you are, and thanks for everything you bring to the state. And it's going to, you know what? It's easy to say, it's going to be all right. I've been really trying to, through a number of different practices on a daily basis, like just try to chill and just get back in touch with my inner soul. And I do think deep down it's going to be all right. I think as much as it may not happen in our lifetime, we're moving big picture. It seems like we're heading in the wrong direction. It seems like we're going to have a nuclear war or something evil is going to happen and the world is going to end. It feels that way, and it ought to, because of what we're seeing in the news. But I think that we're going to be able to raise the level of consciousness on this planet, sooner than later. And once we do that and people realize, hey, this is what a gift, life, earth, friendship, love, even the seagulls that are out there right now, what a gift, what an amazing thing. What are we doing here? Someday, most people are going to think that, and it's because you're like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. And I admire it greatly, and I thank you for being, I think, one of the most important figures in Rhode Island I don't want to say politics, but we'll say Rhode Island politics.
I appreciate it. I don't, there's a lot of things that I'm trying to figure out in life, just like everybody else. And I just hope that people that are listening, that I meet along the way, and that we're able to work together to build that world that we all collectively want to see.
Yes.